Good evening, everyone. Hello, if you're watching this live or if you're watching this on catch up on a replay, thank you for watching. This is my second part of my immunity, building a strong immunity. The last one I did on this was all around the nutritional status, but today I want to talk to you about the more holistic and naturopathic approaches that are just as fundamental and just as important to building a strong immunity. Now, the reason why I've decided to record these at this time of year, we're into March, we're heading into spring and summer. We may think it's not as relevant to be talking about immunity right now, but it is just as important. I'm very aware that people's immune systems have been really knocked for six this winter. And just because we're heading into spring doesn't miraculously make our immune system strong. There are still viruses and things out there that we are likely to pick up. And you may think as it gets warmer, it's not as relevant, but I'm sure you're aware, maybe you've had this or noticed other people that have picked up infections as we move into spring and summer. And actually, it can seem worse at that time of year than when it's winter. So I wanted to talk to you about the other aspects that are not to do with nutritional status, as I've covered that are very important when we think about our immune system. And we need to make sure we think about all of these when we're trying to keep our immune system strong, so that we're not wiped out for any length of time. So the first thing I want to talk about is your gut. Of course, I specialize in gut health, and I see many people with digestive and gut symptoms. Now, even if that isn't the case for you, we do need to keep a focus on thinking about a healthy gut. The reason being is that 70% of your immunity starts in your gut, 70%. The reason for this is that we've got lymphatic tissue. Lymphatic tissue produces white blood cells. There's a huge amount of that lies in your gut. And we're producing white blood cells there as well as in other parts of the body. So we have to take care of the gut. The other aspect with the gut is lining the gut is what we call this gut mucosa, the gut mucosal lining. This can become weakened and we need to keep it really strong because it's in the gut mucosa that we produce an antibody called secretory IgA. Now, what antibodies will do is they kick into effect straight away. So if you're swallowing bacteria, attached to your food, it might be more pathogenic, then this secretory IgA will kick into action straight away to neutralize those pathogens, to stop them taking a hold in the gut. And the mucosa will produce other immune fighting compounds. So this aspect of your gut is really important. Now, because I specialize in gut health and advanced stool testing, then I can see a number of factors relating to this, like poor secretory IgA levels, leaky gut, signs of a poor gut mucosal lining, which is so important for this overall healthy gut, depleted levels of beneficial bacteria that are going to help to crowd out space for pathogens taking a hold. And I can see that with stool testing really clearly with my clients. So what we need to do is we need to be eating a very broad plant-based diet, plenty of vegetables, nuts and seeds, thinking about berries, maybe some brown rice, having a very diverse plant-based diet, because different plants, different fibers are going to be feeding different types of healthy bacteria. In turn, they produce compounds that feed other bacteria and help to keep this gut mucosal lining and the healthy, what we call tight junctions in the gut, strong. So thinking about all those aspects. The second thing I want to talk about tonight is thinking about sleep. Now, many people struggle with sleep, or we don't allow ourselves enough time to get a good quality night's sleep. We need about 7 or 8 hours sleep a night. It's at nighttime that we're going to be producing immune fighting cells. It's at night when we are repairing and renewing cells in our body. So it's just as relevant for our immune cells as any other cells in our body. At nighttime, it's been shown that a lack of sleep does depress our immune function. So we have to keep up good quality sleep as much as we can. do make sure we're not going to bed too late. If you know you've got to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, you want to start be thinking about bedtime from 9 o'clock onwards. You need to be in bed and trying to get to sleep, certainly by 10 o'clock, with the hope to try and get a really good night's sleep. Now, if you're the sort of person who struggles to get to sleep or to get a good quality sleep, the first thing to think about is, are you exposing yourself to too much blue light? Blue light is what we find on our gadgets, on our iPads, on our phones. And exposure to blue light can impact the ability for the body to produce melatonin. And it's melatonin that's going to help us get to sleep and get a good quality night's sleep. So either we need to stay off our gadgets about 2 hours before we go to bed, or we can think about using blue light blocking glasses. They may look a bit strange, but they are very effective because unfortunately, and I wish this was not the case, but we all have LED lights in our homes now, and these LED lights are also supposed to have this impact on stimulating blue light, stimulating the pineal gland in the brain, which in turn can impact the ability to produce melatonin. Another aspect when we're thinking about our natural circadian rhythms, the ability to get up and be alert in the morning, and equally the ability to be ready for sleep at the end of the day, is supposed to be impacted by getting exposure to light in the first hour of the day, getting outside, and exposure to daylight the first hour of the morning comes back to the pineal gland again. So have a think about that. Of course, there are other aspects to sleep, but those are the first things I would think about. The third thing I want to talk about when we're thinking about trying to build a strong immune system is appropriate exercise. Now, I talk about appropriate exercise because not all exercise is created equally and has the same impact in the body. It tends to be lumped together. Getting exercise is good for our health. Well, that's not necessarily going to be the case. If you are a gym bunny loving really high intensity and high impact exercise, and you do this quite a number of days a week, and yet you struggle with coughs and colds and struggle to fight them off, I would rethink what you're doing, because this intense exercise can really impact our immune system and be too stressful and have an impact on the body's ability to be producing those white blood cells that are fighting infections for you. High impact cardio exercise acts as an immune suppressor. It can create inflammation in the body and oxidative stress, and none of these are going to be helpful when we think about our immunity. We know that athletes who are training intensively have to really take care and support their nutritional status, as they're more likely to be picking up coughs and colds. So you have to marry up the nutritional aspects I talked about with rethinking the types of exercise that you're doing. Other exercise is equally as valid and important and more relevant when we're trying to take care of our immune system. It's about movement rather than intensive exercise. It's about getting out of your chair and moving more frequently throughout the day. There was a study that was done that showed that walking for 30 minutes a day, just 30 minutes of walking, stimulated the immune system and white blood cell production. And I've got some information here on an American study that looked at women who walked for half an hour every day for 1 year and had half the number of colds as those who didn't exercise at all. And in another study, 65-year-olds who did regular moderate exercise had the number of T cells, a type of white blood cell, it was as high as those as people in their 30s. So it's about moderation, moderate exercise, walking, dancing, gardening, cycling. It doesn't need to be high intensity. In fact, that could be the absolute reverse that you should be doing when you're thinking about your immune system. So the fourth thing I want to talk about is the impact of stress and natural ways to alleviate having an overdrive on the stress response. So when we're stressed, we trigger the fight or flight reaction. The fight or flight reaction is going to create the release of adrenaline that prepares the body for fight or flight. That's what kicks in immediately. And following on from that, we get a slower release of cortisol. And cortisol is slower to rise, but slower to decline. And we find in our modern day that we spend far too much of our time in a stress response, stress state of mind, with this chronic release of cortisol. And when cortisol is released on high amounts on a continuous basis, it will suppress your immune system. It suppresses the production of white blood cells, make it harder to fight infections. So, of course, it's very hard in the modern world to take care of managing our stress levels, but we need to do all we can. We need to recognize when we're going into a stress response and think about those actions that we can take to move our body away from the fight or flight stress response into the calming rest and digest. And simple things that we can think to do that are some deep breathing, thinking about mindfulness. It's all trying to still the mind. It might be just a walk in fresh air. It might be 10 minutes of yoga, 5 minutes of meditation, anything that's going to turn off the fight or flight, switches into the rest and digest, calm the immune response, lower the cortisol. So there's the ability for the body to be in the production of white blood cells, immune fighting cells. The final thing I want to talk about today is about supporting good lymph flow. As a naturopath, this is really fundamental to good health. It's not something I hear talked about that often. And I will be talking about this on my retreat day, May. If you're listening to this live, I'm also going to be talking about this a bit when we're talking on my 7-day detox program that I'm going to be running next week. The lymphatic system is a really essential part of the immune system. The lymphatic system is draining waste away from our tissues, all that toxic waste, draining it back into the blood system. And it's in the lymphatic system where we have our white blood cells, white blood cell production. We've got lymphatic nodes that are helping to fight and neutralize pathogens. But the lymphatic system doesn't have a pump to keep it pumping around the body like our circulatory blood system. It relies very much on movement, and lymph can become quite sluggish and congested. Naturopaths believe very strongly in this aspect of health, that we need to do all we can to keep the lymphatic system moving through the body, stop it becoming congested and stagnant, because we've got to keep shifting that toxic waste. We've got to help it to perform at its best, and again, in the stimulating white blood cells and your immune system. There's a number of naturopathic techniques I talk about. I'll just cover a couple of these here. One is deep breathing. I've just mentioned that with regards to calming the stress response. But when we're getting to proper deep abdominal breathing, you'll be moving your diaphragm. And when we move the diaphragm, we are helping to shift lymph through the thoracic cavity, and that helps to move it and help it drain back into the bloodstream, and it drains back in up here. And movement, again, is also really important for keeping lymph moving. If we're sitting still, it's not helping to keep lymph moving, because the muscular contractions with movement help to keep lymph moving. If you're sitting still for any length of time, thinking about lifting and lowering your legs, circling your ankles, and rotating your arms and opening up this thoracic cavity can really be beneficial to get the lymph moving. And I will finish on one final thing, which is linked to helping to keep lymph moving. It's also been shown in studies to help in the production of white blood cells, your immune fighting cells, helping with circulation as well. And that is to do with short, cold showers. Now, I know none of you may think that having a short, cold shower is going to be a nice thing to do. And it may seem a bit odd and maybe a bit challenging to start with. But I promise you that if you can get into a habit of trying to build up to 30 seconds of ending your showers with very cold water, as cold as you can possibly take it, for 30 seconds, all over your body, doesn't need to be your head. It is not only going to give you a real boost and fill you with vitality as you get out of that shower and make you feel really warm, but it's doing wonderful things for helping white blood cell production in your body. And nearly every day of the week, I end my showers with cold water. And touch wood, we've got to this point in March, and I haven't had a single cold this entire winter. I may have just jeopardized that by actually jinxing that by saying it. By next week, I might have something. You know, we're always going to pick up infections. I'm not going to say 365 days a year, I never pick up anything. But I like to believe I've got quite a strong immune system because of all my training, the naturopathic techniques I follow, the nutritional status I try and keep my body in really, really high. All these aspects are helping me to help my body keep the immune system strong and fighting for me and not fighting against me. So I hope you found that useful today. Go back and re-listen to this and have a think about those 5 aspects I've talked about today. Do go back and listen to my other blog post, part 1 about immunity, where I talk about the important immune nutrients that we need to make sure we're keeping high in the body, our immune status. And that way, if you have been struggling with your immunity, or indeed you want to keep your immunity strong, hopefully that's going to be really helpful for you. Hope you found that really interesting today. Thank you for watching if you're watching it in my Facebook group. Thank you for watching it if you're watching it on Catch Up or in my YouTube channel. And thank you for watching, and catch up with you very, very soon. Have a good week.